आलोक भूटे। श्लोक फर्स्ट महल असादेवर। श्री गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब। जय मुहाक्का घर मुहाई, घर मुही पितरी डाइये। अगई वसत सिंजानीय पितरी छोर कराई। वधी हथ दलाल के मुस्फी आय कराई। The thief robs the house and offers the stolen goods to his ancestors. In the world hereafter, this is recognized, and his ancestors are considered thieves as well. The hands of the go-between are cut off. This is the Lord's justice. Alok is saying, Dear Acharya Ji Pranam, in these verses I find it difficult to understand why it is being said that the hands of the go-between are cut off by Lord. Go-between as the negotiator. I feel connected with this word simply because I have myself used this skill many a times in operating in the world. I've used this skill to bridge the communication gap, establish peace, fairness, transparency, justice among people. I can think of several noble purposes to use this skill for. Never found anything wrong in it. I suppose the same skill can also be used for evil things and selfish gains. Kindly help me understand the totality of playing the negotiator, because my eyes can't see any evil here, as I don't use this skill unless I feel the pull to help in a situation. Forever grateful for the blessings, Alok. This is an intriguing and a beautiful verse. We must understand this. The thief robs the house and offers the stolen goods to his ancestors. In the world hereafter, this is recognized, and his ancestors are considered thieves as well. Who is the thief? The mind. What does the mind live in, feel related with, deal with, find itself surrounded with? The world. Who are these ancestors being talked of? The source of the mind. The place the mind thinks of itself as coming from. Now what does the mind do? Mind picks up ideas from the world and devotes those ideas to its source. Understand this. It is being said here that the thief robs the house and offers the stolen goods to his ancestors. In the world hereafter, this is recognized, and his ancestors are considered thieves as well. Does the mind really know who his real ancestors are? The mind's ancestor is the source, truth, God, the Lord. But the mind does not know that. The mind comes from the Father, but does not know of the Father. So what does the mind do? The mind collects ideas and stories and stuff from the world and uses them to create an image of its Father. It is said the mind robs the world and offers the robbed things to his ancestors. So something worldly is being taken and is being attributed to the source, the ancestor. What does ancestor mean? The one who precedes you, the one who is there before you, the source that is. So, the mind does not know the Father. But using the world, it creates an image of the Father. Using the world, how does the mind use the world? By gathering stuff from the world. What does the mind gather from the world? Stories, ideas, myths. And what does it do with those stories and myths and ideas? It creates an image of its ancestors. It creates an image of the source, the Father. But that image will be very, very worldly. Why? Because it is coming from the world. And if the image is worldly, the world will destroy it. Time will destroy it. Does the world spare anything worldly? Does time spare anything worldly? So time will destroy even the image of the Father. In that sense, time has dishonored the ancestors of the thief. That which is destroyed is being dishonored. It's a poetic expression, you must understand it. So when you create a worldly God, then the fate of that worldly God is the same as all things worldly. What is the fate of all things worldly? They are destroyed by time. Similarly, your worldly God is also destroyed by time. That is the punishment of those who do not know the one truth, the one reality, the one God. They create fake images of God, and those images only bring them dissatisfaction and dishonor. Now we come to the question of the middleman. The hands of the go-between are cut off. This is the Lord's justice. Who is this go-between? By talking of the go-between, Guru Sahib is referring to the tendency of the mind to acknowledge God and yet think of God in its own terms. This is go-between. The mind could have gone in two extremes. First extreme is acknowledge the real God. The second extreme is say no God exists at all. The ego could have said, truth does not exist, I am everything. Or the ego could have honestly and innocently acknowledged that truth and God do exist and I'll surrender to them. Do you see these two extremes? First extreme is, they do exist, I will surrender to them. And the other extreme is, there is no God and there is no surrender needed. I am all that there is and I'm okay. The ego is a go-between. So the ego says, well, yes, it is true that God does exist. And why is the ego forced to admit this? Because the ego is experiencing suffering every day. The fact of its own suffering is so evident that it becomes undeniable. If the ego says God does not exist, then de facto, ego is saying I am God. And if you are God, why are you suffering so much? So the ego has to admit that God is and I am not God. So the ego is forced to admit the existence of a God outside of itself. Fine. But the ego does not go the full distance. Instead, it remains a go-between. What does it do? Acknowledging God, it invents a God of its own convenience and desire. Do we not do that? While we admit that God exists, but what do? We create images of God. So we say God exists and this is God. God exists and this is God. This is the go-between thing. Ego does not have the courage to say, I am God. And ego does not have the honesty either to acknowledge and surrender to the real God. If the ego says, I am God, even that would be great, because that would put a lot of responsibility on the ego. Having said, I am God, you cannot now invest yourself in petty things, or can you? So the ego will not say, I am God. The ego say, no, I am the little ego. And where is the God? God is in the temple. But who made the temple? The ego made the temple. That's the in-between behavior that Guru Sahib is talking of. Neither are we atheists, nor are we are some go-betweens. Pure Nastikta, total atheism, is wonderful. Because if you just say that no God exists, what you are saying is no God exists outside of you. Pure atheism is the equivalent of saying Aham Brahmasmi. And that is great. Because now the ego would be forced to be its own God. Wonderful. We are not pure atheists. We have gods. Even the atheist believes in some power outside of himself. He may not believe in the church or in the temple, but he believes in the judiciary, he believes in the police, he believes in ideas, he believes in this and that. He does believe in something outside of himself, right? So he does have a God. But he would refuse to have the real God. I won't go that far away, but I'll go some distance. Real atheism is spirituality non-dual. Real atheism would be Advait. And real theism would be bhakti. Devotional duality. Neither do we live in non-duality, nor do we live in bhakti. We are the in-betweeners. And therefore, Guru Sahib says, the hands of the go-between are cut off. That is the Lord's justice. The two extremes are both saved. The in-betweener is punished. Unfortunately, most of us are just in-betweeners. Is it clear?